All right, let's go, baby. All right, y'all. It has been such a struggle to get this podcast going, but whatever. It is what it is. So let's get started, people. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beauty by Name podcast. I am your host and your Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the. Been waiting to record this podcast all day and can't get my words out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beauty by Name podcast. I am your host and the founder of the By Name Beauty Movement. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hey, y'all. What's up? It's Jacoby, your host and founder of the Beauty by Name podcast, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Some of you may have noticed that I have been saying Beauty by Name podcast versus By Name Beauty. To be honest, the two are kind of interchangeable. For some of my new listeners, I started this show because I wanted a podcast that reflected the beauty in each individual person. And the actual name, Beauty by Name, actually comes from a scripture where God says to Moses, I will do everything you ask, for I have called you by name. And so before this show started, it kind of reminded me about how special people are and how voices that had been ignored deserve to be amplified and how people are known by name. So I feel like Beauty by Name, meaning like Beauty by Jacoby, Beauty by you, Beauty by Ashley, Beauty by Kendall, Beauty by James, Beauty by Jasmine, whatever your name may be. I just want that to ring in people's heads, right? Like Beauty by you, not by society, not by anybody else, but by you. So with that being said, we are now at episode 40. Whoop, whoop. Welcome to episode 40 of the podcast. This has been such a journey. And so, whether you are new to the family or you are a ride or die member of the By Name Beauty fam, we start every episode with a segment that we call Let's Get Into the Comments. And that's essentially where we reflect. It's kind of just a funny play on words because if you're on social media, then you know the comments is where you get the true tea. It's where people like sound off on how they really feel about something. And so we start every show by getting into the comments or reflecting or looking back at the previous episode and what we thought about it. Now, let me tell y'all, episode 39 straight dragged me, okay? Like, dragged me by each and every single follicle because the topic of episode 39 was drop the false labels, pick up your identity. Now, what did I mean by that? So, the episode was basically centered around this idea that we have to let go of false labels that we may sometimes place on ourselves and instead to embrace the true aspects of us that were always there from the beginning. And you may ask, okay, why is that important? Because what we believe to be true about ourselves matters. And when we talk about being our best selves, like living in our purpose, going, running towards everything we were meant to be and do on this earth, if we believe things about ourselves that isn't in alignment with the truth of who we are, then how can we ever be our best selves? I hope that makes sense. I'm going to repeat it one more time. If we are putting on false labels that isn't in alignment with the truth about who we are, then how are we supposed to be the very best that we can be? It's kind of not possible. So, for example, no matter how loving you may be, how kind you may be, how much of a skilled writer or actor or dancer or doctor, think about all of the skills that you could potentially have. If you believe things that isn't in alignment with that, like if you believe that you're not capable, if you're slightly insecure, if you feel like you're inadequate on some level, then you can't show up to be your best self in all of those different roles that you may occupy. And the reason why I titled the episode like Drop the Labels is because I just feel like they're false labels. They're not true, right? They're just an untrue misrepresentation of who we really are. And I got really vulnerable last episode and I shared with you all a label that I had actually picked up about myself. And that was that I was shy. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into that episode, because if you didn't listen, then after you listen to this episode, then guess what? You got homework and you need to go back and listen to episode 39. But I had picked up this label of being shy. And to make a long story short, your girl has never been shy. I have a whole podcast if you haven't noticed. But sometime at some point post high school, mid in post college, I started to say that I was shy, and it was a way for me to hide, in a sense, of who I really was. And God reminded me, and actually my mom reminded me too, that I had never been shy, that ever since I was a little girl, I had been ambitious and outgoing, and I was never afraid to speak up. Matter of fact, my teachers always put talks too much on my report card because I was always yapping and just running my mouth. And so I had to unlearn that. I had to drop that label and to pick up my true identity. And that is that I am capable, that I don't have to be shy, that I can be, that I am assertive, a go getter. I do the things that I want to do, that sort of thing. And what I think what was helpful for me was to revisit my past and for me to go back. So for me, I had to be reminded of high school me, that girl who was like very in your face, very assertive, not shy at all, probably could have like used a little bit just of more discretion back then, but for the most part was so confident and secure of in who she was. And there was a beauty in that. And so going back to remind myself in a previous time in my life who I was really helped me. And so my challenge for you all was for you to go back into your life and remind yourself about the truth or a truth of who you are. So have you always been this creative? Have you always been this much of a communicator? Have you always been this good at like oh God, I can't speak, synthesizing things and organizing information and making it so that it's clear to be communicated to others, whatever your thing is. And so I want y'all to let me know, like, did y'all go back and reflect on the truth of who you are? Did anything shock you? For some of us, like, we may have completely forgotten or buried some truths. Like for me, I don't know when I started saying I was shy, but somehow because of lived experiences, because of life, because of trauma, I started to pick up this label. And so for me to remember who I really am, it was like this revelation for me. For some of us, it might not be a revelation. It might just be a gentle reminder, in a tough season. But I do want to encourage you all to embrace the truth of who you are. And once you do, I guarantee you it will propel you in this current space that you're in. And I just want to end on this note while we're reflecting, but I want to make something very clear. The beauty about reminding yourself about who you are and dropping the false labels and picking up your true identity is that no matter what, the truth of who you are never changes. So for me, I may have called myself shy, or I may have been trying to hide because of things that I was uncomfortable with within myself, but that did not change the truth of who I was. Does that make sense? Because I've never been shy and I've always had something special to give. And just because I walked around saying I was shy didn't change the reality of who I actually was. I'm going to use a more mundane example. Think about the people who walk around saying that the earth is flat or that climate change doesn't exist. Clearly, the earth is round, and all you have to do is go outside to be able to tell that climate change does in fact exist. So just because someone may say something that isn't true doesn't take away from the reality of what is. And I say all that to say that the beauty about this is that even if you had been telling yourself, man, I'm shy, or man, I'm incapable, or man, I don't know how to run this business, or I don't know how to do this particular task, or I'm not good enough. Wherever you have been telling yourself that is not true, the beauty about it all is that it doesn't really matter. If once you start to change your mindset and to embrace who you really are, that's all that matters, because the truth about who you are, the fact that you are beautifully and wonderfully made. I said this on the last episode, but I believe that every person listening to this show has a purpose, has a unique God given purpose, something that's special about them, something that the world is waiting to see. That truth about who you are hasn't changed, even if you were labeling yourself incorrectly. It was just a misrepresentation, that's all. But the truth of who you are has not changed. And so I just want to remind you all of that. Like, your true identity has not changed. All you have to do is drop the false labels and pick up the true one. All right. So I got a lot of comments that said I was extremely vulnerable in that show, which I was. Someone told me that the vulnerability that I shared last episode was beautiful, and I really thank you for that comment. Grant actually left me that comment. I thank you, thank you, thank you, because when people leave me comments like that and I know that it resonated with you, it just makes it all worthwhile for me, okay? Because I always say that I sit on this microphone, I speak for an hour every 2 weeks, but the true conversation comes when you all speak back to me and let me know what you thought about it. And so, if the last episode impacted you or made you think, or if any of our episodes, if you have enjoyed them, I want to ask you all to do me a favor, because we are trying to grow this show and to grow this platform. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is share the show with someone else. Some of y'all listen every 2 weeks. Okay, I have my loyal listeners who I know show up for me time and time again. They're commenting on my Instagram. So if you love this show, I encourage you to share it with someone else. Very simple. Send the link to someone else. When you're on your podcast app, just click share and go ahead and forward it. If you don't want to do that, just send them over to bynamebeauty.com and they can click on any of the posts and they can listen to the episode right there from the website. 2, I would ask that you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, which is where the majority of you listen. So as you click on the By Name Beauty Show, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you will see a section there where you can leave us a 5-star review and tell other people about what you think about this show, which ultimately helps us be seen. And then lastly, I would ask that you just drop me a note. You can send me a comment via Instagram or Twitter at By Name Beauty on all platforms. Or you can send us an email, contactbynamebeauty@gmail.com. And again, that is contactbynamebeauty@gmail.com. But yeah, you guys, that was episode 39. Honestly, I feel like I'm still sitting with that episode and still digesting. And I've been challenging myself in other ways, like what labels have I put on myself. And it's funny, even in this moment, this was not planned at all. It just came to me. But for some of us who are Black or African American who are listening to this show, you all are probably aware that in Black culture, there's like this thing where someone will refer to you by your weight. Like, it isn't uncommon for an older Black person to look at you when you walk in the room and say, "Oh, girl, you gained weight." Or sometimes we'll call people fat, and it isn't always a negative thing. I'm giving someone like cultural insight right now. Like, there could be someone who is very, very thin and we may call them fat as like I don't even know why. It's just like a thing that we do. And so my mom has this thing that she's always called me since I was younger. She's always called me fatso. And she doesn't mean it in a mean way. It's almost like endearing to her. She'll be like, "Hey, fatso. Hey, my little fatso." And one day I told her, y'all, I was like, "You have got to stop calling me fatso." Not that there's anything wrong with being fat, or not that you mean it in a mean way, because I know my mom doesn't. She's called me that literally since I was a little girl and I was more chubbier. But I was like, "Mom, like, call me healthy. Call me like, call me healthy. Say I'm in great shape. Say I have long health." Just because I believe that the words that we tell each other matter. And for me, I'm not like this anymore, but at one point I did definitely struggle with my weight. And when I think about labels like that one, even though it didn't come from a mean place, I think that we have to think about the words that we use with ourselves. Does that make sense? Like, I was recently reading that Khloe Kardashian corrects people when they call True big, and she will tell them to use the word tall. And I think that's important because big has a negative connotation and can kind of change the way that child sees themselves. They may think, okay, is big bad? Should I be small? Am I too big? That may just um, cause that child to question who she is. But to say she's tall, okay, that is palatable. That is something that's positive, and that's um, rooted in truth, right? Like, she may be a tall young lady, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to use this word that has more of a negative connotation, big, I think we need to be careful of things like that. So that wasn't in my notes, y'all. I just thought about that as I was recording. So that was episode 39, which was Drop the False Labels, Pick Up Your Identity, streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get into the body of the show, or our new show topic. And I haven't settled on the title of the show, but I do have an idea. And you can probably tell that the show will have something to do with faith. So, y'all know my favorite thing to do is to share with you all how I got to an episode topic or what prompted me to get here. Now, your girl is fresh off of a very successful event that I just hosted this previous weekend in LA. Essentially, someone tapped me to, like, they hired me essentially to moderate a panel on the state of diversity and inclusion within the beauty industry. I was super excited about that, by the way, because y'all know that there is few things that I am excited by more than diversity and inclusion and making space for people who have otherwise not been heard. And so your girl was hired, okay, and she went to this event. She flew out to LA on Thursday. She hosted this event. Well, she didn't host the event, but she moderated or hosted the panel. I asked questions. I was the interviewer. I had about 5 or 6 interviewees, and the conversation was so insightful and so impactful, and it was just a really dope event. And so I've kind of been on a high, after that, and this amazing thing that I was able to do, because this was my first live event. I always tell people that I am a podcaster. I believe that I am a great podcaster, but there is something different about sitting in a studio where no one can hear you and you have that privacy, or in my car, because y'all know I sometimes record in my car. But it's just different when it's just you and a microphone versus when it's you, 5 other people that you have to interview, a group of people watching, someone recording on video, someone recording audio, and you have to like listen and be thoughtful about your responses and think about your next question at the same time. It's just a totally different skill set, live speaking or live interviewing. And so, yeah, I did this event. It was dope. I was really happy. I was really excited. But I think the biggest win for me is that it served as as tangible proof that I can do the very things that I've always dreamed about doing. It was like this actual manifestation of these things that I have believing for so very long. Now, some of y'all may be like, okay, Jacoby, you hosted a panel, you did a good job. We already think you're a good speaker. Why is that a big deal? Okay, let's go through a little story time. Some of you may know I started the Beauty by Name podcast in March of 2019. I knew that I wanted to talk about this cultural aspect of beauty. I knew that it wasn't being touched on. I knew that there was like a gap in this media space, but I wasn't sure exactly what that looked like. I just had a voice, but I wasn't really sure how to like organize it and hone it in at that time. When I first started the show, I was extremely inconsistent, yet I had the nerve to be mad that I didn't have like thousands of downloads, even though I was inconsistent at that time. And slowly I started to find my footing and get my way. And fast forward to 2020, and at this point, I think I'm doing something because I've been podcasting for about almost like a year and a half, almost 2 years now at that point. And your girl thinks that she is like putting out great work, you know? I think that my episodes are good, but I'm still not seeing the growth that I wished I would have been seeing, to be quite honest. Like I was still very dissatisfied. I'm working my very corporate, very full-time job. And around October, which will bring me to another point in a little bit, but I started to feel burnout, extreme burnout. Like, I don't have to explain to y'all, 2020 was hard as heck. I'm working crazy hours at work. I had just gotten promoted because of all of the great work that I had done, thank God. Um, but yeah, between juggling the podcast, between juggling the family, between coming back home and personal things that I was going through, I was just feeling burnout. And on top of that, for me to not to have been seeing the growth that I wanted at with the podcast, it kind of just discouraged me. So your girl decided to quit. Yes, I did not tell y'all that, but I decided to quit like sometime, and you can go back and look at my episodes because I don't take anything down. My last episode in 2020 was released October 20th. And I did not release an episode November or December 2020. I did not release an episode January or February of 2021 because I was convinced that I was done, even though I didn't tell anybody this. And somewhere in between that time, of course, I couldn't stop thinking about the podcast or you all, because just because I was mad doesn't, or frustrated, doesn't mean that like my passion died, because it didn't. And after I started to rest and like get myself back together, you know, God told me, try again. Like, don't worry about whether you get 20 downloads or 30 downloads, because those 20 people are showing up for you every week. Just worry about putting out good content and believe for more. Like, it will eventually happen. And so fast forward to that journey, because like I said, I started the podcast in 2019, and now here we are at the end of 2021, and I'm coming up on 3 years of podcasting. This panel was really like a milestone for me. And I don't want to yes, I am going to make a big deal about it because it was a big deal. But I did so well at this panel, you guys. Like, I did the doggone thing. I was going to say damn, but you know, we don't curse on the By Name Beauty podcast. We try to keep it clean. But I did really, really well. Like, I was very proud of the work that I did. I was prepared. I was punctual. I was captivating. I was insightful. Not a single person in that room um, failed to mention to me how good of a job I did. Like, every single one of the people that I interviewed, all of the guests, people were coming up to me until the time that I left to share with me how amazing I was as a host and as a moderator. And I reflected on how I got here. Like, how did I get to this point? How did I get to this point of like manifesting or being who I ultimately want to be, of actually doing the thing that I wanted to do? And this brings me to our big message or main point of today, because it was a combination of two things to get me to this point. Like I said, I started inconsistent, not faithful, kind of confused on what I wanted to do. And here I am, where now people are recognizing my talent and asking me to do things on their behalf. Because like I said, I hosted a whole panel that was not for me, that was not for my company. Someone else saw my value and hired me. And yeah, I got there by two things. One was having faith. And this is really important because faith is something that we possess, right? Like, y'all know that I love to define my terms. If you Google the definition of faith, one of the definitions that will come up is to have a firm belief in something in which there is no proof. So for me, before I ever got to hosting that panel, I believed and hoped and saw myself as on-air talent. I believed that the podcast was going to be successful even before I saw crazy downloads. And even now, the show is growing, but it still hasn't hit what I wanted to hit, right? Like it's a slow climb. But even before I got to this panel, I saw myself being successful in this space. I had a firm belief that this was going to happen for me, you know? And again, going back to our last episode, but what we believe to be true about ourselves matters. And if you don't believe me, because y'all know I love my scripture, but Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So, me simply believing and seeing for me to see the thing before I actually physically saw the thing, that's what helped me get to that point. And I know that many of us love to manifest. We love to do our vision boards. We love to write the vision down and make it plain and make it clear. That is amazing. Keep doing things like that because you have to have faith and you have to possess that belief that it will actually happen. Even right now, some of the things that I'm believing for, I don't even know if I should share it, but I'm believing that I'm going to be a talk show host one day, that I'm going to have even a bigger platform than the one that I'm currently on. And even though that may seem crazy, I don't have a background in broadcast journalism. I've never been on anyone's television screen, but I'm telling you the things that I'm believing for because I have to have faith in what currently isn't seen, right? And for some of y'all, it will be a very easy concept to understand because if you listen to this show, I'm very open about my Christianity and what Jesus has done for me, but our entire faith is about walking by faith and not by sight, like meaning walking by something that you cannot see, believing in something that you cannot see. And so having faith was super important. But the second portion of that, not only having faith, but also doing faith. Now, what do I mean by doing faith? Most of us think of faith as just a noun. That's really easy for us to comprehend because what is a noun? A person, a place, or a thing. So it's really easy for most of us to understand that faith is something that you have, that you possessed. But it's a lot harder for a lot of us to grasp that faith is also a verb, that it is an action word, something we actually do. And so we not only have to have faith, but we have to do faith. And when I was preparing for this show, I thought about this scripture that comes from the book of James that I had been reading. And I'm going to read James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. And I'm just going to read it because, I can't be no better than scripture, y'all, okay? I may have all the words, but the Bible is better. It says, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm and eat well, but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? You see, faith by itself is not enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. And that's where the scripture comes from that we quote all of the time. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. That was me giving y'all the full context. Like, really what the scripture is saying here is that, like, how can you say you have faith if you aren't doing faith by your actions or by the deeds you're producing? And I think this is really important because a lot of us, we love to say positive affirmations. We love to manifest. We love to put it on the vision board. Not that that isn't important, because it is. And I'm not downplaying that. I want to be clear. But if we are doing the affirmations and if we're speaking to ourselves without having the actions to match it, boo, you fooling yourself. And this isn't to like beat you up either, because I've been there. Like I said in the beginning, when starting this show, I was like upset that I didn't have 10,000 downloads a month, but I wasn't even posting on time every day. I wasn't even posting on the same day each week. And that's why my biggest goal for this year was when I restarted in March. Y'all know that I have been coming to y'all every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. Even if it's late on a Tuesday, I'm coming to y'all on a Tuesday. Even if I got to stay up until midnight the night before. So, yeah, that's our big message for today. Not only do you need to have faith, but you have to go and do faith. And that is what has gotten me to this point, and that is what's going to continue to propel me further. And so I want to leave you all with a little bit of encouragement, because I am just now sharing this, but this is actually our last episode of season 2. Not of the Beauty by Name podcast, but just of season 2. So, meaning after I release this episode today, because it will go up today, it's Tuesday, I'm going to take a rest, a break, a sabbatical, because this is naturally the time where my body starts to this is like my season where I know I'm prone to burnout. And so rest is important. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to rest and strategize and get ready for season 3, which will start up in January. But before I leave you all, I just want to go through some of our lessons that we've talked about this season, because if you've been following the show, you know that everything that we've been talking about for probably the past 3 months has been about identity and how we see ourselves. And it has just been steeped in personal growth and how we view ourselves. And when I say steeped, baby, I mean steeped like sweet tea on Saturday night and stirred and poured in your cup in the morning. Okay. That is what we have been focusing on. So I just compiled our biggest lessons from this past season of the By Name Beauty podcast. And I'm hoping that this will prepare you to go do the thing. I'm hoping that this will prepare you and empower you to not only have faith, but to then go and do faith. So, our first lesson, how do you're listening to this podcast, you're like, Jacoby, I hear you, but how do I actually have and then go do faith? Well, one, you need to believe that you are more than enough, which is a lesson from episode 35. You know, who you are in this present moment has the tools and the abilities to succeed. I know that a lot of times we think that we need fixing. I know that a lot of times we think we need the newest camera, the newest ring light, the newest MacBook, the newest skills. We need to go to the newest panel, the newest, training. But everything you need is currently in your hands. You don't need fixing. You don't need any more additional parts. Now, will you grow as you do the thing? Yes. But everything you need to currently succeed is in your hands. And so, episode 35, More Than Enough, really was a reminder that how you are today in this moment is good enough. And everything you need to succeed in this particular moment, like in the current moment, you already have. We're not talking about future you 10 years from now. Over time, you're going to pick up the skills and the tools and the strategies that you need to succeed in that season of your life. But right now, today, you are more than enough and you don't need fixing, even if you don't have it all together. And the beauty about this is that it is absolutely true. Y'all know I'm not a preacher, but when I feel the Holy Spirit telling me something, I just have to share it. You are more than enough how you are. And I know that to be true about you because guess what? God loves you how you are. He will never ask you to go get yourself together and then come back to him. He loves you just how you are. And everything that you do need for a future version of yourself, you will learn along the way. But lesson 1, to prepare yourself to have faith and then go do faith, is to know that you are more than enough. And if you need to be reminded of that again, then go back to episode 35. Lesson number 2 is to embrace your authenticity, which is a lesson from episode 36. I'm going to sound like a broken record because I always say on this show that I believe that every person listening has a special and unique God-given ability. That is really the purpose of this whole show. Beauty by Name, Beauty by Jacoby, Beauty by Sharkeisha, Beauty by Antoinica, Beauty by Janisa. I'm making this rhyme, but I hope y'all get my point. Like, everyone has a special and unique God given ability within themselves, a special sauce, a special drip, something that you do so well that no one else can do just like you. And so don't get caught up in trying to podcast like anybody else, or to host like anybody else, or to rap or manage or produce like anyone else. Just do you and embrace your authenticity. When I first started listening to started this podcast, I was convinced that I needed this interview model, that, like, meaning every episode that I put out needed to be an interview, because my favorite beauty podcast at the time, which was the first beauty podcast I started listening to, Fat Mascara, that was their concept. It was two editors. They would sit down with an expert and they would interview this person. But that didn't align with By Name's purpose. That didn't align with how this show was supposed to be run. Like, I am very comfortable talking to just you on this show, just me and you, and y'all show up every week. And that's good for me. And so when I started to embrace my authenticity and like the special way that this show was supposed to maneuver, that's when I felt like I finally started to see success. So just to recap, we have lesson 1, know that you are more than enough, and then 2, to embrace your authenticity. And then 3 is episode 39's lesson, which is to drop the false labels and to pick up your identity. I won't get too deep into this because we spoke about it so in depth during the intro. But again, it's important. Like, believe the truth about who you are. That's a part of the having faith part. Like, believe the truth about who you are and challenge yourself. If a negative thought or something that comes to your mind that isn't true about you, I encourage you to say it, to get it out, to write it down so that it can like release the hold that it has on you. And then I want you to repeat the truth about who you are to yourself, and to write that down and to cancel those false labels. Moving on to the 4th lesson. Be resilient and endure even when it's tough. And this is very, very, very important for the do faith part, right? Have faith and do faith. So this is a lesson taken from episode 38, What My Fitness Routine Taught Me About Resilience, which you all loved. But essentially, we spoke about how the ability to endure even when it's hard is what sets us up for success. Me giving up in October of 2020 because I didn't have 10,000 downloads was very silly, very immature, and very telling of my character during that time. Because guess what? You don't all of a sudden have the platform and then you're ready. You have to practice in the dark room. You have to practice when no one's looking or listening. And eventually, if you're putting out something of value, the people will come. You know, the amount of times I would check my analytics and see the same 20 or 25 people that were listening to this show, and I was upset. And now I look back on it like, that was amazing. This show started with 0 listeners. It started with 5 of my closest friends. And so as long as you are focusing on the work and creating value and getting better, and you are resilient, there's like this quote that says, you could be like chipping at an iceberg. And every time you put that ice pick to it, you just see a little chip fall off, a little chip, a little chip, a little chip. And then that one hit could be the thing to cause the whole iceberg to disperse. And that's what I think about when I think about being resilient. You have to keep at it even when it's hard, even when you're not seeing the results that you want to see, and eventually it will click. I guarantee you. And then lesson number 5, create your own personal revolution. We actually talked about this a couple times this season during episode 27, how the pandemic changed my beauty routine forever. And then in episode 33, do you want a revolution? And the main takeaway there is to own who you are for yourself. What are you passionate about? How do you want to show up in the world? In a world, and especially a beauty industry, where there's a lot of telling us that we need to be the same, we need to look the same, be the same, do the same. It's important for us to create our own personal revolution. Who is the individual within you, and what do you want to look like? I don't even want to go off on a whole tangent about this, you guys, because I'm so passionate about it. But there is no one on this earth with a bill. How many people are on this earth? Like 7 billion. I feel like that's quoted a lot. There are billions of people on this earth, and there's no one quite like you. So create your own personal revolution and walk in that. And then our last lesson, last but not least, is from episode 34, which is to take God with you. No matter where you go, no matter what space you're in, God is there to anchor you, to prosper you, and to guide you. Like, this life is way too hard for us to be trying to do it without God, okay? So that was episode 40. Have faith, do faith, and go be all you can be. All right? That was so fun, y'all. Thank you for listening. And again, if this episode impacted you in any way, or you enjoyed it, you didn't, drop me a comment, drop me a DM, or leave us a 5-star review. I read almost every single one, and I try to respond to almost every single one. So I look forward to hearing from you all. All right. If you are listening via a podcast app right now, you will probably hear an ad from our sponsor. And then we're going to move on to our last segment of the show. Girl, what have you been up to? All right. So, girl, what you have been up to is the last segment of the show where I essentially divulge something that has been making a difference in my life, whether that's a product, whether that's a practice, whether that's a ritual. It's just something that has been helping me. And I am choosing to share with you all today that what has been helping me is resting. Okay? Now, you might have heard me say this, but I am going on sabbatical. This is the official end of By Name Season 2. Okay, of Beauty by Name Season 2. We're going to come back for Season 3 at the top of January. But rest is so important, especially when we start to get into the season, the fall. You know, it stays darker later. We naturally want to sleep in a little bit more. It's important for us to like eat more nourishing or like hearty foods. For many of us, as the holidays start to wrap up, things are so busy. Like, we have party after party after party, and Thanksgiving and Christmas and birthdays, and it just goes and goes and goes. And we can feel like we're on a little bit of a hamster wheel. And I know for me, and this is where it's important to know your body and your like seasonal flow. But towards the end of October, I dip down. And I can look back to even in college, like when I was in DC, and it would get like gloomy during this time, and it would be so hard for me to function. This time of year can just be tough for me, and I know it can be tough for a lot of people. So I've been prioritizing rest. I really have been taking the time to actually rest, to not do anything if that's what you desire. I would find myself working 7 days a week. Like, yes, I'm working Monday through Friday at my corporate job, but on Saturday, I'm running around. I'm doing stuff for the podcast. On Sunday, I'm preparing for the next week. I'm meal prepping. I'm doing this, that, and the third. And lately, I have really been trying to be okay with not doing anything on a Sunday. I may go for a walk. I may relax. But I have been really challenging myself to not plan out my to-do list for the week. I need to do that on Friday. To not feel bad if I sit on the couch with my family and watch a movie and I'm not editing or uploading something for social media. That should have been done on Saturday. For me to take one day throughout the week to rest. And like I said, even going back to this show, I am taking a sabbatical because what happened last year when I was ready to give up on this amazing thing that I love and that's impactful for me and impactful for you all, I don't want to have to go through that again. So I'm going to take 2 months off. The first couple weeks, I might not do anything. And then I'll start to slowly get back into it. I'll start to strategize and figure out what I want season 3 to look like. I'll probably batch record some episodes, so I have some things already in the pipeline. But I'm going to take away the pressure of uploading every 2 weeks so that I can enjoy my family, so I can enjoy the holiday, and so that I can rest. And so I hope this helps somebody, because maybe you've been on the go and you haven't stopped and you're starting to feel burnout. And honestly, that's even how I've been feeling. And that's why I was so adamant about taking this sabbatical, because I probably had about 2 or 3 episodes that I was planning on releasing in November. And I told myself, no, take November and December off. The holidays are coming up. You have some things to do. Just take it off and rest. Rest, rest, rest. Because when you rest, you're able to come back better, stronger, badder than ever, okay? So that's what I've been up to. Your girl has been prioritizing rest and reminding herself that, listen, she needs to rest to be great. You can't pour from an empty cup. I always tell my mom that, by the way, because she's always on the go. And I always tell her, how can you be great for your family if you're worn out, if you're tired, if you're empty and drained? And I wanted to share this piece of wisdom that someone gave me. I did not make this up. And then after this, we're going to wrap up. But I listened to a show called In the Light by Dr. Anita Phillips. And she is like a pastor / licensed psychologist and therapist. And she definitely like bridges the gap between faith and mental health, because listen, your girl believes in Jesus, but she also believes in therapy. And so she was doing this episode about overwhelm and about how sometimes we can feel. And she said something that was so groundbreaking to me. She said that when we are burnt out, it's usually like a culmination of a lot of things. Like, you don't become burnt out over one day of hard work. It's usually because you've been going too long, too hard, too fast without prioritizing rest for days, weeks, even months, maybe even years at a time. But she said the beautiful thing about resting and recuperating is that it doesn't take nearly as long as it took for you to get there to recharge. She was like, you would be surprised what even a day to yourself would do for your mental health, or an hour walk in the morning by yourself or just quiet time would do. She was like, some of us think we need to like take a 2-week vacation, and that's just not the case. Oh Lord, they're cutting off the lights on me in here. I'm at a studio, guys. And so I wanted to remind you of that. Take a day at a hotel. I'm very good at that. I've been doing that a lot lately. Like just going to a hotel for the night and doing that and being done. Even if you can't go away for a day, take an hour to yourself. Take 30 minutes and leave your phone somewhere and just recharge. And you'll be surprised by how that little bit of time can do or have major effects. All right, you all. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm so excited for the Beauty by Name podcast and what we have coming in the next season. Someone is calling me. Wow. Oh my God. I swear I'm always getting interrupted when I'm on this show. But I'm excited for this next season. I thank y'all for rocking with me, for riding with me. I can't wait to see how our family grows. And when your girl comes back, she's going to be better than ever. Okay? Be blessed. I love y'all. Have a great end to your year. And before I go, just because this is the last season or the last episode of season 2, this won't be the last time that I post. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-upload some of my favorite episodes from season 1, because our tribe has grown since I first started the show, and there's some good episodes back then, okay? So I'm going to re-upload them and you can listen to those. I'll still be a little bit active on social media, nothing crazy, so you can always check us out there. But yeah, expect to still see uploads, and I'm just going to revisit some of our best moments from season 1 so you can still have something to listen to. All right, without further ado, I love you all, and